All right, welcome back, True Seeker. Got to get that mirror shot today. Says the phone wants to be this way instead of the other way, but regardless, it doesn't really matter. It's about what I'm saying, not how the video looks. So this video, it doesn't have a title right now as I stream, but it's essentially called What a Presidential Candidate Should Be Talking About in 2024. And again, the question is where to begin. The things that our candidates are talking about have nothing to do with anything. Trump's talking about crowd size and Kamala switching up her accent, which is a real weird thing that she does do. But just all this like nonsensical BS. That's what you constantly hear Trump talking about. How great everything's going to be if it's him. How horrible it's going to be if it's somebody else. No accountability. And you get zero accountability from Donald Trump. And it's sad that his base doesn't see that. If you guys want to know why inflation's so bad, it largely has to do with Donald Trump. And really, these are just puppets. It really has to do with the cabal that stands behind these candidates they give us to choose between. But again, the reason inflation's so crazy largely has to do with what happened while Donald Trump was the president, when they started printing crazy money because of the policies that came out of the lockdowns, that came out of the banker agenda of Switzerland, which was all part of the plan. Inflation benefits them, not us. But anyhow, rather than talk about what these stooges aren't talking about, again, let's talk about what real candidates should be talking about in this day and age. How about what JFK talked about September 25th, 1961? When was the last time a president or a presidential candidate talked about what JFK talked about on September 25th, 1961? I think actually it might be, it's hard to say. There's so many important things to talk about. But maybe that's the most important thing to talk about right now. And if you don't know what he talked about to the United Nations on September 25th, 1961, it's more relevant than ever. He talked about the future of weather control. Again, for my audience, we're a broken topic, but we're going to hope that we reach some new people here with this video. Again, if you do not know about JFK's control or his speech about the future of weather control, go back and listen if you can, or find the writing, the script of that speech that he gave to the United Nations. It was talking about emerging technology of weather control and how it can be used to ensure there's no more droughts. You know, how it could be used to benefit the people of this country. So this was an emerging technology 63 years ago. And again, if you look into the historical record, the first time weather warfare, which would be another terminology for weather control when it's used in a warfare purpose, again, the first active admitted weather warfare was almost a decade before that, August 15th, 1952. So he spoke on this 9 years later, 9 years and about a month and 10 days later, JFK gives a speech to the United Nations. Remember, this is around the same time as Vietnam, where back then the U.S. military did admit to weather warfare and using cloud seeding to flood out the Vietnamese tunnel systems. They increased rainfall to flood out the tunnel systems that the Vietnamese troops were dependent on. It's the way they fought back against America that had, you know, superiority through the air. You know, the way to undo that is to go underground. And then the way to the U.S. military figured out to wipe out what was going on underground was to use their air force to do cloud seeding to create massive rainfall using, you know, whoa, people are just driving wild here right now. What's going on? For amateur drivers, don't YouTube stream and drive. You just never know what crazy drivers are going to do on the road. But anyway, look at what they did this year, you guys. This year, on the 63rd anniversary of the president who was assassinated in 63, you know, just massive hurricane that's now destroying parts of Florida. On the 63rd anniversary of his speech, we get Hurricane Helene. And again, I mean, you know what? A president at this day and age, he should be calling out the enemies that are domestic, that work by this Kabbalistic code against the people every day, like what I've been doing for the last 11 years. You know what? I think any real leader in this country should be doing exactly what I've been doing for the last 11 years, sacrificing my life or their life to speak out against the tyranny that's having a very negative impact on this country and pretty much the rest of the world, because as former presidents have said, this is a new world order. This is a world order. It's not just domestic. Again, we are owned by international bankers, as are most of the nations of this world. But again, just coming back to this hurricane that formed that day. Again, you learn this little Kabbalistic code of letters and numbers, things really start to pop out. Hurricane Helene equates to 259. What day did it form? 25/9, the anniversary of JFK's weather control speech. You apply numerology. Hurricane Helene equates to 83 instead, just like flood, just like how the biblical flood ends in Genesis 8:3. And it is interesting how it ends after 150 days in the Bible, because the word Illuminati is 150, and they're the ones in the light, and they say the sun's 150 million kilometers away. But the thing about 83, as we pointed out, the hurricane formed exactly 83 days before the Pope's birthday. And that's not an accident. The first act of weather warfare was admitted to on the Jesuit order's birthday. Again, he's the first to live at Suite 201 at the Vatican. Weather control equals 201, just like the Jesuit order, going with Lyndon Johnson saying who controls the weather controls the world 201 days after JFK died at Jesuit Holy Cross. Again, all of these things need to be pointed out by an authority so people take them seriously. Again, there were presidents at the beginning of this nation who were speaking out against the sinister Jesuits back when the definition of Jesuitism back then used to be trickery and deception. Again, a real leader should be calling out the Jesuit cabal and what they're doing in this world, and especially this country. And why is that not happening? Because they own these politicians, because they own this media. They own Donald Trump, who went. They own Kamala, who couldn't pass the bar until she passed it at the Jesuit University there in the Bay Area. And did she really even pass it? Or did she just give a few more, she might have just started pleasing some other Willies besides just Willie Browns. Because we know how synced this whole thing is still with him to this day. And if they do put her in there, watch what they're going to do to Willie. He'll be the latest blood sacrifice. Again, these are the things that should be called out in this nation. A real presidential candidate would be talking about all the evil shit going on that needs to be stopped in its tracks right now. And understand what pays for this weather warfare are dollars through the military budget. And we all know the military budget has a massive black budget, which means nobody gets to know what it's spent on. And why do you think that is? You think the weather control program's in there? You bet your bottom dollar it is. You think all the tic-tac-toe patterns in the sky are part of that? You bet it is. I'm up here in Washington State, as far away from Florida as you can possibly be in the continental United States. You know what the weather was like here on the anniversary of JFK's speech? Crazy windstorms everywhere. My dad, I don't know what's wrong with my dad. My dad went out and tried to put fertilizer down in the yard while the wind was blowing like crazy. And he's like, oh man, it got all shot up in my face. I'm like, you haven't laid fertilizer in the last 9 months. Why are you trying to do it in a windstorm? And my dad, he's part of this baby boomer generation. Great guy, love him, but just like up here, I don't know. I mean, the DDT and all the stuff they were experimenting with back then, the baby boomer generation, some of them are just lost in the sauce up here. Who's putting down fertilizer in a windstorm? And again, I mean, I feel bad for the people of this country. I rant about how much I can't stand the American people because of how dumbed down they are, but I realize it's because of an agenda. It's because of all the chemicals they put in the food, the water, the air, the nonstop indoctrination, the people being raised in front of screens. I mean, all of this has taken a major toll on most people's mental. And anyhow, I mean, the understanding this weather warfare and stopping it, think about how many problems it could solve. How many trees have they destroyed? These are the same people that want to tell you that they want you to pay money for carbon credits because they want to save the climate. These are the same people bringing weather warfare that's destroying environments, burning down forests, knocking them over with windstorms, derechos through the middle of Iowa out of nowhere that wipe out untold numbers of crops. I remember all of a sudden around the same time as the derecho, all the egg farms started burning down. Next thing you knew, egg prices are through the roof. Again, all of these things that are being done are being orchestrated. It's not Mother Nature. It's not because, oh, this war just broke out over there. Again, learn what we're talking about. You'll see why the war in Russia and Ukraine are going on. Who told you Gorbachev was going to die days after it started and then it happened? Again, they broke up the Soviet Union, and now it's essentially a civil war what they have going on over there. And don't kid yourself, they're going to do the same thing in this country at some point. Of course, they're putting movies out right now. Their plan still might be 50 to 100 years away, but someday the same thing will happen here. They'll break up this country like they broke up the Soviet Union, and then they'll have them warring against each other. Just watch. That's how these people work. And again, this is what real leaders should be talking about, who these people are, the Jesuits, the same ones that have been warned about for centuries, the same ones that came over here across the Atlantic and said, oh no, you're not escaping us Europeans. You're not escaping our tyranny. We'll have you on lockdown over here. Thanks for helping us accelerate the plan, because we were planning to expand over here anyway. Now you're really helping us move along our agenda. So yeah, I mean, the weather warfare, destroying our environment, causing insurance costs to just skyrocket everywhere. I mean, almost all of us are paying double insurance from what we were 4 years ago. We haven't made any claims, but we're all paying double. And the reason why is because climate change. Like if you ask the insurance, well, they'd say, well, it's because of the climate change and all the horrible things that have happened all across this nation to land and people's property. So accordingly, we have to keep up with costs so that we can stay afloat. Okay, let's realize it's not Mother Nature. Let's talk about how it's that military black budget and they're using the same shit JFK talked about 60-some years ago. Instead, you got a doofus up on the stage talking about, oh yeah, the immigration's so horrible in here, they're eating people's pets. Listen, I don't know if that is happening or not, but let's go back to Doofus Man who's making that claim. What did Doofus Man promise in 2016? Does anyone remember what Doofus Man promised? He promised he was going to build a big, beautiful wall and get Mexico to pay for it and shut it all down. Did he deliver on any of that? He built a wall with more holes in it than wall. It cost us billions of dollars, and now illegal immigration's worse than ever. You think that's an accident? This is all part of the sick joke from the cabal. They made a lot of money off building the wall with all the holes in it, and they're the same New World Order that wants to funnel in international people all over so that America, the people whoever understood what this country was supposed to be about, even though I don't think it ever was what we were told, but they don't even have any concept of that, and they don't even care about it at all. You know, again, we're getting so many people from the eastern part of the world where they just learn to tuck their head like a turtle for authority. They wouldn't dare say a word back because in their countries they get their head lopped off. And that's already pretty much how the American people are anyway, but it's just accelerating that mindset. And it's just accelerating the idea that you should just bow down to authority. And I mean, you look at the average American person right now anyway, they're ready to give up their First Amendment rights. They're ready to give up their Second Amendment rights. They're ready to watch the cabal bring in all these new harsh laws for people who might be perceived as mean, bullies. Listen, bullying people isn't right, but God, toughen up. If a bully's giving you a hard time, figure out how to make it so that bully can't give you a hard time. That should be your mindset, not go cry in a corner and be a little wimp. It should be, you know what? I'm an American. I'm from the land of the free, home of the brave. Our mindset is we're tough out here. That's not our mindset anymore, is it? We're not free and we're not brave. We're scared of the cooties. Oh my God, people died in a nursing home from the cooties. Oh my God, lock me indoors. Send me an infinite supply of Lysol. I mean, and like I told you guys, the Lysol is more deadly than the cooties is. Yeah, it is. You shouldn't be using Lysol. That product is so carcinogenic. You are shortening your life using that, I guarantee it. By the way, I never checked in the chat. Can you guys hear me? I'm not muted, am I? It'd be funny if I'm just ranting to a screen you guys can't even hear. Somebody gave a super chat, so that's a sign of you guys can probably hear me. I can't make it out, but I can see the R. Thank you to the person who gave a super chat. I appreciate that. All right, you guys can't hear me? Okay, that's good. Yeah, sometimes sometimes it's just muted for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but okay. Yeah, so I mean, the weather warfare thing, I mean, you could argue that it's the number one thing that should be getting called out right now because it is real and people need to know about it. And I mean, look at all the problems it's causing. It is destroying our environment. It's destroying our food supply. It's destroying our property. It's making things incredibly expensive. I mean, it's insanity. And for all of you guys who don't, all you flag bearers out there who don't get it, your nation is not sovereign, and it has not been for a long time. The people who control this nation are not, they don't consider themselves Americans. They consider themselves rulers, and they're ruling over your ass. And when they destroy property in this country, how does it work? The governor, he says, okay, it's a state of emergency. We need funds from the central bank. They get those funds to make repairs. Who made the money on that? Who made the money on that loan? The people who rule over this nation. That's who made the money, because they get a lot of interest on that. And they're just sitting back and collecting stacks every day of taxpayer dollars that pay for the interest on their loans. And a lot of those loans were created out of some necessity from some problem they created. Like when they blew up the towers and started a war with some boogeymen that were in a cave. And then we needed to develop new missiles, what we call them, bunker busters. You know, blow the top off of mountainers, whatever they called those things, and just blowing up all. And again, you guys, you didn't see the joke there either. Blowing up all those mountains in Afghanistan, you know what that really was? That was starting the mining process for all of the minerals in there that are largely like on the devices we're all looking at right now. Notice how everybody has these supercomputers in their hands that we call smartphones. A lot of the resources for these phones come from that part of the world, out of those mountains that we blew up. All of these things, perfect agendas. Again, everyone started getting cell phones in their pocket, then 9/11 happens, and then boom, you got a surveillance act where now they can collect all your data and information through your phone and literally keep surveillance over the American people. And everyone shrugged their shoulders and say, well, that's what they had to do to keep us, you know, safe from those turban-wearing terrorists over there. No, that was a lie and a story they fed you to execute an agenda to build their surveillance state, because they want total control over you. And look at these little smart devices. I mean, we all know how it is. You're talking about something, and the next thing you know, you got ads popping up in your phone about that. Sweet lady and I are talking about our baby's name Ruby. Next thing you know, an ad's popping up on her phone for the movie Baby Ruby. It's just like, look at that. I mean, it's crazy. And then we're like, we didn't want to see that. It's some like horror movie about like this demonic child. So she's like, oh my God. I'm like, don't worry. It's crazy Hollywood movie. That's not the way our child's going to be. But no, I mean, it's just, so, okay. You know, weather warfare needs to be talked about and stopped. Surveillance state needs to be talked about and stopped. Big tech. See, now here's the thing. I really don't like the idea of government because of how corrupt it is. But I think if I became, let's just say I was the president of the United States, I would find a way, since there is a government, to make government truly small, but have like some things that like nobody's really going to have a problem with. And maybe you got to have a way to amend laws because things come up in time. Like right now, I think something the government does need to regulate is big tech. And the way they need to be regulated is very simply. They are not allowed to censor speech, period. If you're going to operate in America and be an American company, you are not allowed to censor speech. You're not allowed to censor, period. You know what? Just censorship should not be allowed, period. That's not what this country is about. We're not about censorship. You know, here's what I'd say. If people even want to put pornography on YouTube, who gives a shit? Don't watch the channel, because what is it if YouTube's not allowed to have pornography on there? Is that making any difference? There's free pornography everywhere. What, you don't think your 12-year-old knows how to find the 1,000 other free porn websites that are out there? There's no excuse for censorship. There shouldn't be any point blank period. If you don't like something, everybody has the controls on social media to not go to that page, to block that page, to make sure that page doesn't show up. Now, I mean, should it also be that they can't like market and social media is promoting all? Not to say that social media shouldn't be able to promote porn, but you know what? I really do think they do. I mean, look at all the Google spam bots that promote porn links in your videos nonstop. I'm pretty sure that's Google doing that because they certainly allow it to happen. But yeah, again, the one thing I could think of that government should do with its regulatory power is make sure big tech is not censoring speech. That's the one thing that I really don't want them to censor. It's just that, again, anytime you start censoring anything, now you've opened the door. You've opened the door to say, well, we're censoring this, so why not that? And the next thing you know, it started with one thing. Now it's two things. Now it's 20 things. Now we're censoring 1,000 things. You know? And again, the other thing is the federal government wants to talk about how much social media is influencing elections, but then they also throw up their hands about like, well, they're private companies, so they're allowed to censor whatever they want. It's like, nah. If you're saying they're so instrumental and so influential and they can swing elections, then we're talking about how powerful they are, and we need to understand then that they're swaying a lot more than elections, and something needs to be done about that pronto. And again, I mean, that is where the idea of like a decent government comes in, and like even like making, I mean, it's such a slippery slope, because once you get corruption in the government, then you can't trust the things that it controls and regulates. If a government is to ever be successful and right for the people, it has to be 1,000,000% transparent. It has to be uncorruptible. It cannot be swayed by money. Like our whole, like, I don't know if you guys realize this, but out of all the countries in the West, out of all the Western nations, the nation that it's the most expensive to try and be a candidate, where meaning you have to be the richest, is the United States of America. So, I mean, that just shows you right there. Like, America's so far from freedom. It's totally big money. It's totally corrupt. It's totally banker controlled. And yet you got all these flag wavers out there who just can't wait to go out and vote for one of these stooges we're being fed right now. That Nick Shirley kid, the 19-year-old kid that wears magical underwear that gets to go on Fox News, I'm not a fan of that kid at all, because I mean, he's just like a bad stereotype. Any black person on the street is like, hey, you look just like this black person. It's like, God, does this kid not realize what a white stereotype he is in his magical underwear? But if you're not aware of him, Nick Shirley, again, he gets to go on Fox News. They had him go on and do a recent piece where he got to go into a prison in South America, and he talked about how he talked about the food that they feed him there, and he said all they feed him is beans. They literally don't feed him Hold on, my stream cut out here at some point. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if the phone's overheating. Might be the phone's overheating because the sun's on it. If it goes out again, we'll just call it good right here. I'll do a better stream later. But anyway, this Nick Shirley kid, again, he gets to go on Fox News. He doesn't know anything about anything. But the one thing that I like that he's doing right now is he's traveling to all the swing states, and he's just a man on the street asking people who they're voting for. What I like about it, and it's painful to watch, is just listen to people on the street just like express themselves about why they're voting in this election, why they're so persuaded by one candidate, and you just see how lost in the sauce the whole country is. I mean, and it's because they all are watching the news, and all their information they're getting from it is from propaganda sources, and it's insanity. It's insane to listen to the American people talk. You know, he doing his interview, first guy in Wisconsin that he interviewed, the guy in Wisconsin says he wants to pay way more in taxes so that American schools can do better. Have you done any research, sir? America pays way more per student than almost any nation in the world, and we're raising the dumbest people on the planet, like almost bar none. It doesn't have anything to do with how much money we're spending. Again, India spends about 1/50th of what we do per student on their education system, and raises people that are light years ahead of us. That's why they have all the best jobs. So no, we don't need to be taxed way more so that we can have better schools. I mean, it's just an insane statement. What we need to do is figure out how to be taxed way less and do a lot better with what we have. And I mean, you start to look at so many schools right now, nation, they got one principal and 4 vice principals, and they're all making $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Well, why does a school need 4 vice principals? What are they all doing in the office all day? Jack shit's what they're doing. I got Pokey McDokey here in front of me. But yeah, I mean, education is another major thing. We need to figure out how to revolutionize American education, and I really think it's pretty simple. I think it's like greatly cut down what's in the curriculum, because so much of it is just total bullshit and a total waste of time, and it's essentially indoctrination material to make you think America's the greatest place that there ever was when it's not. And again, just the first few years of school, raising decent people, why it's important to be a good person. why it's important to learn how to cooperate and work with one another and respect property and other people's property, because what that does for society. You know, if we had a society of good people, there wouldn't even be any type of excuse for the police state that we have in this country. If people learned how to work and cooperate, there'd be synergy. Again, they don't want any of these things. They want a society where everyone's me, me, me. They're all individual and they're all easily conquered by one state apparatus. But yeah, again, all that we need in education is reading, writing, and critical thinking and math. And science, real science, not Anthony Fauci, the science changes with the wind kind of science, but actual real science. I mean, that's important too. But again, our school system should be that by the time you're about in 7th or 8th grade, you probably know a lot about yourself and what you might like to do with your life. And again, I mean, you might really be drawn to the sciences or mathematics or the arts. There really should be tailored paths so that for the next 5 years of your public education, you can really get into those things. Almost like when you go to college and specialize. We need to allow younger students to specialize in what they want to do. And for those who haven't figured it out, I mean, there's a path there too, where they're still getting a taste of the world. But I mean, by the time you're 18, as much time as we spend in slave school, again, they got us pledging to 13 stripes for 13 years in slave school. Again, just so much more should be accomplished, and we should be so much further ahead. I mean, you look at a guy like D26. He's our Indian contributor who's a brilliant researcher, very young guy. Somehow he looks way older than he is. I mean, he could pass for 30 and he's like in his early 20s. But the guy's brilliant if you know who D26 is, right? You listen to him and you're like, wow, he's that young and he's that smart and he's that knowledgeable and he has a better handle on the English vocabulary than almost any 18-year-old in this country. Just well-rounded, knows more about our history here than probably anyone that came up in the country. And again, it's because he's self-sufficient. He knows how to educate himself outside of the classroom. He's got mega skills like so many of these Indian students do, and that's why they're over here taking all the best jobs. And I mean, I'm not even mad at them for it. The one thing I'm mad about the Indians is they're also coming over here and running big tech, and then on their off hours, they're running all these scams on us too, that are mostly all tech-based. That's like, they need to work on their morality over there too, because I'm getting tired of getting called by 50 Indian scammers a day. But yeah, why not just emulate what India's doing instead of like, oh, we need to spend way more. How about let's look to India, the impoverished nation that's a third world country that raises people that are 50 times more smarter for 50 times less the price. Doesn't that sound like a smart plan? That would really be my proposal. Again, there's a reason they don't want to do all this, you guys. They just want all this government bloat. Probably a lot of you feel that are the principals and vice principals in the school, and why some schools have 4 vice principals, which is like, what the hell? I mean, it didn't used to be that way, but now it's very common that schools just have all these vice principals. Huge amount of expense to the taxpayer. Yeah, anyway, I'm just saying there's just so much bloat and waste. And then, again, I started with number 1 could be weather warfare. Number 1 could also be the way our government uses our tax money to subsidize agriculture. They subsidize junk food way more than anything else. They subsidize corn and sugar, and most of that corn's either used for high fructose corn syrup, which is fake, more carcinogenic sugar with all kinds of health hazards connected to it. Or ethanol. And I mean, it's just insanity. The reason that people's grocery carts are full of soda and junk food and ice cream is because it's being subsidized and it's making it cheaper and affordable, even though it's all become horribly expensive in the last few years. But if instead the subsidies were going to organic produce, organic, free range, animals, things that are much healthier for people to eat. Again, you're solving a major problem right there, because we're spending crazy money on, well, we're spending crazy money on subsidizing junk food, but then we're spending crazy money even more on all the disease and illness that's caused by it. If we had a healthy, fit society, we wouldn't have these extreme medical bills. And again, if people had better food running through their body, they'd be thinking on a higher plane. They'd be doing more with their life. You'd have a lot less people that are so dumb that they have to be completely dependent on Big Brother because they can't do anything with themselves. And I mean, it just, yeah. And again, there's a reason that none of these things get talked about ever. It's because they want it this way. All these stooges they put on the stage are part of this New World Order cabal, bought and paid for. I mean, you got Kamala and Donald Trump are like arguing over who's more connected to fast food right now. I mean, come on. Who's more connected to fast food? It's insanity. But they know in this dumbed down populace, that resonates because these people are sadly mostly a bunch of fast food eating slobs. This is the society they've created. I mean, somebody should be up on the stage and calling out how embarrassing of a nation we are. Poorly educated, fat and sloppy, just weak, frail, emotionally insecure. I mean, it should be called out on the stage that there's something severely wrong in this nation, that 2 out of 3 adult Americans are either on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety med, if not both. What does that say about us? I mean, how bad is that? 2 out of 3 people have some severe emotional, mental problem that they have to be on a med to cope. And we know how it happens. It happens because of the horrible docs. The diet is a big part of it. People's bodies just all on sugar and caffeine and energy drinks. I mean, there's a major source of it right there. But then it's also because of the culture we create and what happens to people in the school system. I mean, people do get bullied in the school system, but you got to learn to stick up for yourself. You got all these fatherless households, so you got all these soft kids that don't have a dad around to teach them how to, stand up for themselves. And again, they've also taken away the right for people to, do things that are human. When I was growing up still, you were allowed to fight without, fear of a lawsuit. And I'm not saying fighting's the way to solve problems, but sometimes that's what you got to do. I got jumped by 2 bullies in 8th grade. They were mad because an Asian girl was flirting with me. There were 2 Asian kids. Back when I was in middle school, there was this big thing going on, Asian persuasion. You wanted but no, this Asian girl, she had a little crush on me, and the Asian boys didn't like it. They tried to jump me after getting off the bus. And you know what? They found out the hard way. I grew up around older people, and I was tough. I put them on their ass, and there was no more of that. You do that today, I might have had a police officer showing up at my door. So anyway, I got to hop off, True Seeker, and yeah, we'll do a better stream on this, but it just makes me so sad to see the American people just falling for these stooge candidates and so invested in all the BS, and they don't have a clue about MAGA being the highest degree of the Church of Satan, and they don't realize that the highest tenet of Satanism is worshiping yourself, which is all Donald Trump does, and they don't know about the Obama joke on the Church of Satan's 45th birthday at the White House Correspondents' Dinner when he was still the president, April 30th, 2011, with Trump in attendance, that he was going to be number 45. They don't understand how rigged the game is. And they should see all that. And they should see how bad these candidates are. And they should understand why they shouldn't consent to bad candidates. Donald Trump is not an accountable person. And all the stuff you guys are mad about who are voting for him, you need to take a good look in the mirror and think about the policies that happened while he was president. And you guys have to say, well, the COVID happened. It happened because he allowed it to happen, okay? All that thing was seasonal flu, exactly what it was coined as in 1968. The people of this country, because they're ignorant and they're not well researched and they go to all the wrong information sources, they fell for it hook, line, and sinker, and they allowed this New World Order agenda to further along in a major way, and they still haven't learned, and now they're ready to go back to the same guy who allowed it to happen. And Kamala's not any different either. She was on there by the numbers, getting her little pokey doke, telling people to go out and get the experimental thing that made a lot of big money, a lot more money for big pharma, for a lot of people's health jeopardy. But yeah, I got to hop off, True Seeker. Again, thank everyone who's liking the share. Thank you to the people who donated. I really appreciate that. And again, if you want to support the work and help us get back out on the streets of America and, do a lot more pavement pounding like we did a few weeks ago in Portland, Again, the Patreon's a great thing to support. Links in the description. Thank you.